came to San Francisco 40 years ago in 1974, and what drove me was I worked for the post office since I was 15, and that was a normal age of leaving school in England at the time for the education that I had. And I realised after my father died in 1973 that I didn't want to be in the post office until I was 6, Miss Jarvis as I was then, in the post office till I was 60, 65 years of age. And I always wanted to come to America as a person living in England and seeing Hollywood and all these recording stars. It just seemed magical to me. And I met a man and we got married in England, English, and came straight to San Francisco. I was always a tomboy with my twin sister, Frances, and we both were netball players, which is similar to basketball here for women, and both enjoyed it, although Frances always had the edge over me. She was the better footballer. The local boys would come knocking on the door asking Frances to play with them because she was that good. And where we lived there was a fairly big green where the boys and Frances would go and play soccer. And we started off by using a tennis ball. We lived in a close, so there was this whole, like a round ring that we used to play with a tennis ball in our shoes and then elevated to the field. And we didn't do any more than that until I came here. Oh, and Frances said to me she wanted to create a girls' team. And I said to her at the time, I don't know why you want to do that. I said, it's so unladylike for girls to have big boots on the end of their feet. Well, she was still adamant she wanted to do it. And then I'd heard about the Golden Gate Women's Soccer League, and a friend of mine, Englishman John, he said that a friend of his wife has a team but we're looking for women players. So my friend Irene, another English woman, and I went to one of their practices. I had no equipment whatsoever. In fact, I think I turned up with my cashmere coat on. And one of the friends, Debbie, she's still a great friend of mine now after all these years, looked at Irene and I and said, oh, they won't last. I was on the executive committee for 22 years of the Golden Gate Women's Soccer League. There were about 3 divisions when it first started. It first started in, I believe, in 1977 by 3 women who would kick the ball about and they called themselves a different name at the time. And then it became Golden Gate Women's Soccer League sometime in the early 80s. That was, I came in 85, I joined them, so probably late 70s, early 80s when the Golden Gate Women's Soccer League was established. And I played in the Golden Gate Women's Soccer League for all those years. I also played in a over 50s women's team out of San Mateo. That was mainly a tournament team, and that was great. I got to play at the Olympic training ground outside San Diego. Just a marvellous thing. And they had the national anthem, and a young boy turned up with a radio, and he was in his full military uniform, and he saluted, and we stood to this tinny sound of the national anthem. It was a wonderful feeling. I felt absolutely honoured, because I don't think, other than the women's national team, practices there, and I don't think there were many people who had that opportunity. So that was a highlight of my playing career. In 1999, I began to realise, as the women were getting older, they were more healthy, looking after themselves, and women lived longer, that their playing careers would last longer. But there was nowhere in the Golden Gate Women's Soccer League for them to play. So I created, at the time it was called Over 40s. We started putting out flyers in ladies' bathrooms, gave them to women on the team to give to their school so they could give to their mums, give them to the teachers, put them in park and rec places, coffee shops, and we drew some players from that, so it was really early stuff. On the first practice we had at Glen Park, there was a woman there, her name was Barbara, and I said, oh Barbara, could you take a throw-in from over there? And she looked at me, she said, what's the throw-in? And I thought to myself, oh, I'm assuming a lot here. So it was then that I asked a good friend of mine, and he's well known in the soccer world, Toby Rappo, wonderful coach, if he wouldn't mind taking a couple of practices. Well, those practices became clinics. And so for the first year or so, it was more clinics than games or anything. Of that, though, we were able to create a team. And there were 40 people then practicing. And so I decided to ask the players, what name should we have for our team? And so we all put and the person whose team name was picked got a soccer ball, so it was an incentive for them. And so they each put their names in a hat. And I asked a friend of mine, Alyssa, she had a big position at the time, I wanted somebody neutral. And so I asked Alyssa to choose the team, pick the name. And it came out as Forte, which was rather significant as there were 40 people. And it was the team that I was on. And so that was the first team in the over 40s at the time. They wanted to play. And I didn't want them to go into competition because I thought they would lose. I didn't tell them that. But they wanted to. And they came off that field, and they played in the open competition. And they came off that field, although they lost, I can't remember the score. But their faces just showed it all. They came off there were lights in their eyes, and there were smiles, and they were sweaty, and they were red. But they had a great time because they were playing a sport that they had become to love, got into it, very excited, and saw how beneficial it was for them. And the one great thing about football being a team sport is, when I first started to come back and play, from playing netball, is that camaraderie that you have with those team members, you don't get with other people. You get a camaraderie with people at work, but the people that you are sharing space with on a field, and you make mistakes and they support you and they help you, that's something I'd forgotten. And it's something I was so pleased to have back in my life.